Alright, so this is a story that I have been telling for hundreds and hundreds of years. Since before the Egyptians built the pyramids, since before the Great Wall of China, since before America, which was a lot after both of those other things. Now, this story is so old because it's been passed down from generation to generation through Anglo-Saxon culture back in Norway when the cold and the Vikings swept across the north, across all the cultures. This is the story of Grendel's mother. Now, we begin with, "All hail Beowulf!" Everybody in the mead hall was cheering and dancing and having a wonderful time, for Beowulf had just defeated the most evil monster ever. They were cheering things like, "Beowulf, Beowulf, Beowulf," and "We have just defeated the worst monster of all time," and "Can you feel it, Mr. Krabs?" They were having a great time. They were jumping around, and they were partying and swimming in gold. He felt even more flawless than Beyonce. He was swimming in these jewels that were given to him by the king. Now, the king is sort of irrelevant. He has a really long name. It's Norwegian. You probably won't remember it. Beowulf is the main character of this tale and the journey that he goes through. So they were having a great time. And then, later in the evening, after they were done swinging on chandeliers, they all went to sleep. Now, some of them were still sleeping on the chandelier, and I don't know how that's possible, but it was still happening. And they were, enjoying their rest after a long night of celebration. Except for Beowulf. Beowulf slept with one eye open because he knew in his gut that danger was afoot, and that somewhere out there in the great kingdom there was still another threat for him to take care of. And he didn't know how this was possible, because he knew that he had just killed Grendel, and Grendel was the worst monster of all time. Now, let me be very specific as to how bad Grendel was. He was worse than weekend homework. He was worse than stepping on a Lego. He was worse than an angry teacher in the morning who hasn't had her coffee yet. This was really bad stuff, guys. He was the worst. And Beowulf had defeated him, which is, of course, why they were having this great time, right? But he knew there was danger somewhere. Now, this danger just so happened to be Grendel's mother. Now, yes, Grendel's mother. She was restless in her lair as well. She couldn't sleep. Now, tell me, if somebody had killed your son, would you go out and try to get revenge for your son's death if you were the mother? Yeah, well, so would Grendel's mother. So she decided that she was going to set out on a journey to the mead hall, which was this place of celebration. So she went to Heorot, and after about, maybe 10 minutes of running through the town, she found this place where Beowulf and all the warriors were asleep, except for Beowulf's one eye that was left open. I don't know how you sleep with one eye open, but he did it, because, he's just amazing. She found this place, and she was really big, and she came all the way around and peered in the window and saw all the men sleeping. Once she had chosen her victim, she snatched 3 of the men and ran off back to her lair. Now, Beowulf saw this, and right when this happened, he exclaimed that he knew what he must do. He must fight Grendel's mother. But this is Grendel's mother. You can see the body bag. It was very, very bad. Everybody was very concerned for these 3 warriors. Grendel's mother had just taken them right out of the place where they lay their heads at night. They didn't know what to do about this, but Beowulf knew. He said he will fight Grendel's mother. He grabbed his armor, he grabbed his shield, he grabbed his sword, and he set off, following her slimy footprints all the way back to her evil lair in the middle of the forest. Now, he went and started on this long journey, and he didn't really know where she was going at first. He had never been to her lair. So he follows the path, and it goes all the way into the forest, up to this evil lair, which is this swamp, this nasty, smelly, gross swamp with all of this mud and dirt and filth and sea monsters in the water swimming everywhere. And sea monsters never sleep, so they're up all night, and this is really awful. So he finally gets there, and it's dark. He doesn't know what to do. And is Grendel, what do you think he finds? Who do you think he finds in this lair?
Grendel's mother.
No, she's not even there. He doesn't see her. There's no sight of Grendel's mother. But he does have an idea where she might be. So, what he does is he dives into the water, down, through all of these sea monsters. And he doesn't really know where he's going at first. It's hard to see. It's all murky, and it's dark, and it's nighttime, and he feels all these sea monsters brushing up against him, but he knows he's stronger than them, because he already defeated Grendel. And Grendel was the worst. They can't be worse than these sea monsters. But he gets down, and he finally finds the lair of Grendel's mother. And he gets down in there, and he sees on the table 3 bowls of stew, neatly set out. So he goes and sits down and tries the first little bit of stew, and he says, "This stew is too cold." So then he tries the next one, and he says, "This stew is too hot." And then he tries the third one. He says, "This stew is just right." And just then, Grendel's mother bursts through the door and says, nothing, because Grendel's mother can't talk. And he gets up from the chair and says, "Oh my goodness, what have you done with my 3 brave warriors?" And Grendel's mother says nothing, of course, because Grendel's mother doesn't talk, right? We already decided that. She's a monster. If she could have talked, they would have already settled their differences, right? They wouldn't even have to fight. So he jumps in, and he says, "Where are my 3 warriors?" And then he realizes what has happened. She's made warrior stew. All of his 3 men have perished, which is awful. So he is so angry that he takes out his most trusted sword, the very sword that he killed Grendel with, and starts to fight with her. He slashes her, and as the first slash, he swings his sword as hard as he can, but he misses because it's really hard to swing underwater. Plus, he's been holding his breath this entire time. I don't know how he does it. But he swings his sword and misses. Then they fight a little more, and he finally gets a hit on her. He actually stabs her with his sword. Unfortunately, her skin is so thick that even though it goes into the skin, it does no damage whatsoever. So he knows that his sword is now useless. The one weapon that he has trusted his entire life to defeat Grendel, the worst monster in all of the land, is now useless against his mother. So he throws the sword out and starts fighting by hand. Now, when they're fighting by hand, he realizes that Grendel's mother is a lot stronger than he originally thought. He originally thought, yeah, you know what, I can do this. I beat Grendel, I can beat Grendel's mother, she's probably this old lady, I can just handle this, right? But no, actually she was very, very tough and very challenging, especially now that he's fighting her by hand. However, he notices out of the corner of his eye this very shiny, glamorous sword that, although it is dark and murky in this place, somehow the little bit of light that is making it down reflects magnificently off of the sword up on the wall. It is beautiful in color, and it is so shiny that he knows it must be sharp enough to pierce her skin. So he pushes himself away from Grendel's mother, grabs the sword, and just as he grabs the sword, Grendel's mother comes at her, and he slices her right in half with the sword. And there she lay, completely dying. She's dead. Yes, she's actually dead. She's actually dead. And he takes the sword, and he decides that then he will swim back up to the surface. So he swims back up to the surface where all of his men are, and his army cheers so loudly because they are amazed that he could go into the lair of Grendel's mother and emerge not only alive, but victorious. Then they ask, "Well, where are the 3 men?" And he says, "Well, they're dead." And they go, "Okay, well, never mind about that. But you killed Grendel's mother," which is fantastic because Grendel's mother was terrorizing the entire village. And that is the story of how Beowulf, the greatest warrior of all time, killed Grendel's mother.